Hi, my name's Tom Childers. And I just drew on this whiteboard. I'm trying to come up with a better way of understanding political spectrum. And this is not supposed to be a dig against liberals in a traditional sense. But there is a tyranny and liberty spectrum, and a lot of people don't have the same opinions about tyranny. Some of them want it because it's like helpful to them, or so they feel. And it's basically when you want help from, like, anytime you say to yourself, somebody should do something about that, or we should do something about that, or how do we let billionaires be billionaires, or like we need free healthcare. You're positively activist, like being an activist for the state to take control of the people. And so we call it statism, because that's being nice to the people that want tyranny, because it's a give and a take. And so that's this idea over here. Now, on the other side is liberty. But the problem with liberty, this is not just like freedom, it also has openings for, and what you end up seeing, what the statists end up seeing in particular, is corruption. Because when there's tyranny, everything is corruption, so there's no corruption because it's all corrupt. But when there's liberty, well then, things become suspicious, and you start being able to see, oh, okay, that doesn't look like it was right. It was corrupt. We have the most corrupt system of government in the world. When actually being able to see corruption for what it is, and see things that aren't corruption and think it's corruption, actually is a sign of having the least corruption in the world. But the people that wish for more corruption are the ones that want the state to take over the operations. That's what's corrupt. That's what they're asking for. And so when people say, like, leftists, what they're signaling to everyone is that whatever they want us to call them, they are trying to promote tyranny. Some of them call it a soft tyranny, but they also want a strong man to come and save the day. So sometimes it's kind of hard tyranny. And we don't have to. We're not the only nation that wants a strong man. Like, lots of people have strong men. Like, it's they celebrate strong men. Lenin and Mao and Chavez, Che Guevara. I mean, all the strong men are the left's heroes. They thought Obama was going to be a strong man, or at least a smart man. I don't know what to say to either of those charges. But it's not enough. Because there's also, well, what about the Nazis? What about the communists? Like, what about anarchy? What about Sharia law or the Holy Roman Empire? Well, there's another factor that gets into play that mixes it all up, that makes it impossible to distinguish what do they mean when everyone's a Nazi, and the right, the alt-right, the like shaking my brains crazy, everything that's not rooting for tyranny, straight inverted, perverted morality tyranny is on the right, well, that's like really disabling my ability to understand anyone talk about anything. So I made like a much more complicated system, but then I kept distilling it down and like rolling it around and then reading to all of the other people throughout all of our history, modern political science, trying to figure out the same problems. And I actually made some connections with some other very potent symbolism with like religious and mythological overtones, but that'll be for another day. So to make this like a little bit more, before I say this, I want to say that we're actually never going to experience the ends. We're only in the middle. And so when we talk about things, don't feel offended. I'm not actually talking about you being out here. You're way in here, and I'm just way over here. So we're actually really close to each other in the grand scheme of things. But in order to understand things, you have to consider them for the ideal of the ideology, what it represents, theoretically. So this other spectrum, or the north-south axis, order and disorder, which is kind of like fixed societies with lots of laws and cultural institutions. Like, we know what we're gonna do, we do it, we're orderly. You follow the rules, you walk through lines, you have apprenticeship, you prepare, you get admitted into schools, they train you for the job, you work the job, you get into retirement. Everything is encouraged or discouraged based on laws or reward systems. And disorder would be the breakdown of the system. It's basically the anarchists. Like it's right around the nihilists and the minarchists, or the libertarians that think that we should have like private security forces or like police departments, or that we should just run over them. It's the populist movements and protests. They're not necessarily anything in particular, but they're an action for change. And so, in order to press against the state as it is, you have to pull it apart. And so, like, people are right when they know that what we gotta do is march or demonstrate. But it's not necessarily true that we need a march in order to break the state apart. Although that pressure is what relieves and allows you to move along. You can create order, and you can create disorder, and the whole thing ends up like pulling and pulling and all the rest. I put in the positive side, or the like realistic side, adjective to the concepts of order and disorder, dogma and change. So this would be like not so much reform, but more revolution. And dogma is tradition, but it's a specific kind of tradition, one that's set in stone or written, and it doesn't include some traditions either on the other sides, because there's some traditions that are like bad traditions, but then again there's actually like some good things about them. Like this bit of slavery is not a good tradition, but actually in Christianity they had like way better rules of slavery than America today, with the 13th Amendment and the way that like they call them criminals, and they make them work for pennies on the dollar on farms, and they move them around, separate them from their families. It's brutal. It's worse than Christianity. They talk about every 7 years they get released. There's a limit to how long you can be enslaved to 7 years. And that's like much more compassionate than what we have today. I think you can get like 120 years or 400 years or something for having a gun in a school zone or something like that. I don't, doesn't make any sense to me. But I mean, crime is crime. Calm down.